Hello and welcome to the Brothers Get In podcast, the show that explores how to create more prepared, more resilient and more responsible human beings. I am Stuart, aka Gads the Better Looking.
That's always a questionable statement, that one. But we'll go with it for now. And I am Dr. Anthony Gideon, aka the Organic Mechanic.
Good one. Yeah, you got the brains, maybe. I got the brawn.
Something else.
Good looks, the everything else.
The charm, the wit.
All questionable. Okay, in today's episode, we are up to episode 7, and we're going to have a look at fitness.
Fitness is an interesting topic. It's really broad. And I think we'll never get enough time to talk about fitness. We could talk about this forever. So we're just going to hit and miss and touch on a few topics of fitness and how they relate to our training system in the 4 spheres.
Right, so this encompasses one of the 4 spheres of our training philosophy, the physical sphere, where it's all about physical training. Obviously, then we've got knowledge, we've got skills on top of that, and then we've got resilience training. So this is specifically aimed at today talking about or touching on some of the elements within our training philosophy when it comes to the physical element.
Yeah, so they all overlap for sure. None of them are done in isolation. But physical fitness is a big component to everything we do. You need a modicum of physical fitness to be able to be a human, to conduct daily life, and to surpass that in times of need and readiness. I always remember, we say harp on about myself and Stuart, how we had our time in the Special Forces. And, you know, when I see movies on Special Forces operators and things like that, you know, they're big and they're ripped and they're, you know, super strong. And I don't know if that's always a reflection. Like, being fit and strong is part of being Special Forces, but it's not the be-all and end-all. You need to be fit enough and capable enough to carry out in times of need, when things do go wrong, but it's not planned to push yourself to the limits all the time.
Yeah, I often think about this from the terms of what's going to increase my survivability, both in an emergency situation and in mundane, everyday, normal life. That's where, you know, this training system that we have is really aimed at, right, if I was thrust into an emergency situation, or the person who I'm training, who was training with me, is thrust into an emergency situation and had to survive, what things are going to increase their survivability, what things are going to increase my trust in them, that are going to make them a drengir in the Viking term, which is a trusted man. Somebody who is fit, capable, ready. And a big part of that is, are you physically prepared to undertake arduous tasks? So, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll actually go through a little bit of definition of what fitness is. You hear this word all the time, and I have worked in and around the fitness industry now for years. After I got out of the military, I went straight into the fitness industry and worked there, and then got sick of it. Mainly because it's just this weird catch-all term that people use, and I don't think people actually understand truly what it means, what the word means. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about why it's important. We'll have a look at some of the things that we believe are required, like fitness requirements, or the things that you should be able to do as a human. And then we'll talk about some training tips and some things, you know, you might want to think about for improving your training, personal training, when you're actually doing it. So stick around for the end of the episode and listen in for that.
So the definition of fitness, I think you've spent a lot more time in the fitness industry than I have. I've just been out there doing stuff, but I probably don't have the same background knowledge as yourself. Give us a rundown of what you reckon fitness is from your point of view.
So when I think of fitness, to differentiate it from the fitness industry itself, which I think especially in our society is based around aesthetics mainly, like what somebody looks like, sometimes what people feel like, not necessarily what they're capable of doing, or that is just a measure which is a simile of aesthetics. And what I mean by that is people don't deadlift and try to get to a certain weight because they know, right, if I can deadlift X amount, that means I will then be able to translate that into my work or whatever it is. They do it because they can tell people that I can deadlift X amount.
Social media.
Which, you know, there's good and bad to that, because it is encouraging people to get out there and actually still work out. And you know, I'm kind of happy about that. But here's essentially what fitness comes down to. A wrench that fits a particular nut is fit. A t-shirt that is not too loose and is not too tight fits. Ergo, those things have fitness. So a tool or an object or a thing that is suited to its task is fit and has fitness.
So fit for purpose. And look, I'm going to say the words, but I hate it because it just gets so abused. Functional fitness. That is a very I'd say almost abused word these days in that fitness industry. I think it's used horrendously, and it needs to be brought back to what it does purposely mean, is you're fit to function, fit to do things, capable of being able to live your life with not too much pain and be able to have reliability and trustability in yourself and in others because they're fit around you as well. And not, as you said, not for show, which I think it's kind of been hijacked a lot, this word functional fitness.
Yeah, that's a massive bugbear of mine, because you hear it all the time, and people are always on about, oh yeah, well I do functional fitness, and I quite often ask people like, cool, what's your function then? And it's just blank stares. They're like, what? Like almost panicked. What do you mean? What do you mean? What is my function? Like, what is this functional fit? Well, I do kettlebell swings and I do deadlifts and sled pushes. I'm like, cool. What's the outcome? Like, what's your function of this? If it's functional fitness, how is it functioning? And some of those things that I just mentioned, I do consider functional fitness because they have translation into usable, everyday techniques that you could actually implement into your life. Ergo, it has function. But the fact that people can't articulate that they can't make the link between that and almost put the horse in front of the cart, or the tail is wagging the dog, that the reason they are working out certain things, certain functional movements, is so that they can get better at those functional movements, to perform those functional movements, and sometimes then compete with those functional movements.
And look, I think you see a lot of it. People will only do those movements and those actions whilst they're in a certain particular place and time. So in the gym, working out in the gym, in your gym clothes, in your perfect environment, with all your gym equipment and all your things like that, which kind of frustrates me a lot too. Because when I think of functional fitness, it should be like, right, do it in your work clothes. And if that's your suit, that's your shoes, that's what you should be training in. That's what you need to be able to function in. So you need to be able to be adaptive and use, if you want to lift a deadlift, but you need to be able to do it at any stage, that you need to use those skills. So digging down into that a little bit further, I want to have a look. So in our 4 Spears, when we're looking at physical training, and it sort of branches off, and there's some key components to it. And we want to break those down into what they sort of mean. So these key components of speed, power, strength, endurance, and flexibility, and what that sort of looks like in that sort of picture. So what do you think we're looking for speed? What would speed mean to you?
Speed, I think, is actually your ability to react and maybe produce a... If I want to get technical on it, it's kind of linked with power, in that it's you're producing a outcome, a strength-based outcome over a short period of time, but you're doing it in a repeated way. So generally, like, you're thinking moving your body. how quickly can I move my body?
How quickly can you move? How quickly can you react? So again, it's not just a physical thing, but it's of the mind as well. So train that extra muscle that sits between your ears. And you're right, speed does equate to power. I remember this back long ago training in martial arts. I was only small, so didn't have the ability of power, but I was able to figure out that speed plus technique equals power. So it's not just raw effort. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea when you say that, and we're talking about physical elements, and quite often people can go, right, speed, so we're going to be doing sprints, and then we're talking about reaction as well. So it might be some sort of boxing drill, or touch pads, or something where you got randomness and you have to adapt and quickly change. Perhaps even agility type drills, as in running agility drills, where you've got to change directions, change levels, go up and down, this sort of stuff. And different stimuli means that you have to react in different ways. So this is all I actually include under speed, because what you said there, you're training the mind as well as the body. You're always training the mind as well as the body, because we are really good at compartmentalizing those two things and going, there is a mind and there is a body, and now the twain shall meet. Like they're totally separate. But in actuality, if you've never trained in a gym before, you've never lifted weights or anything, you'll go in there, you'll start lifting weights, you'll learn techniques, and you will see generally a huge improvement. Most people see a massive improvement. The actual amount of improvement of your muscular tissue is like infinitesimally small compared to what is actually going on. What is actually happening there is your neuron connection, and your motor neuron connection in particular, going from your brain to your muscle, is what is actually improving in that first couple of weeks when you're training.
Yeah, well, and not just the first couple of weeks. I think that improves throughout the training. This is what you see, a big jump in at the start. When people start training, they get the neurodevelopment happens really fast. Then in that middle ground, you start to get that muscular development. And then in those later stages, when you look at Olympic athletes or professional athletes, they're back to developing that neuro network and improving on that. And that's where they get their improvements, no longer in that bulk of that physical phase in the middle.
Yeah, so when I think about this, and you would have experienced this as well, we've both been in employment, had a vocation where our physical ability was in a very real way linked to our survivability. We've been in war zones, we've been shot at. Our ability to move, probably a little bit above and beyond what the societal norm is, meant that we have an increased chance of survival in those situations. And speed is one of those things. It's not something. Speed is not necessarily thinking about, can I run a marathon? This is very short term. This, as I said, is bleeding into power as well. So can I produce an effort over a short period of time that is quite high?
Absolutely. And then getting that dynamic sort of power is the next sort of part of power, I think. And that involves a lot of speed. And you see that you can develop that in certain types of training. So things like your Olympic lifts and things like that will develop this kind of neuromuscular speed and these dynamic speed. Developing that is the next sort of step, I think, in developing that sort of moving into power.
Yeah, so power we'll talk about. Power is linked a lot to strength as well. Because strength I think of as, and you can actually break this down into how you measurement and absolute strength. So I could lift slowly over time, 200 kilo in a deadlift or something, say, once. Whereas when we introduce speed or time, a time element to this, now we're getting power. So we've got strength at one end, which is not time limited. We've got speed, which is all about time. And the medium ground in between these two, where they bleed through each other, is what I would define as power. So the ability to produce a strength-based outcome over a short period of time.
And I think to do that, it takes a rather specific sort of training. So you've got to be narrowed in on what you need to do. And that's why I sort of use the example of the Olympic lifts, because they're rather specific, using that development of speed and power in a short amount of time. And to build on that, it just takes time. I mean, yes, it does come back. I said before, technique is very important when you're getting to this stage for developing that speed and power. If you don't, you're running into these issues of injury. And although we talk about physical training, what you can achieve, an important part of all our physical training underlying and being anti-fragile or a resilient human will be remaining injury-free, finding training that you can do that doesn't damage you along the way.
I no longer understand this concept, being over 40 years old.
Everything injures.
Everything is injured, everything always hurts. When I was in my 20s, it just didn't matter. I'm sure I took horrific injuries when I was in my 20s, and I'd just go to the pub, drink a few skewies, and you'd be right the next
Wake
day.
up in the morning, it's all gone.
Yeah.
That's why it is more important than ever to train for consistency and for without injury. I think as we get older, you've got to train smarter.
Definitely. So the other sort of areas we've got here, like I said, strength, power, speed. When I'm thinking about power too, I'm also thinking about I for a while there practiced a lot of parkour, which I know is a bit of a meme and a joke, but it is actually something you can practice and is quite fun and quite useful. So that's where I'd actually put that power element in. A lot of the ability to jump, the ability to quickly climb up walls, to do dyno movements when you're climbing, to do muscle ups and things like that. That's all what I would say power is. You could do a muscle up very slowly if you have extreme amounts of strength and control, like gymnast level sort of stuff. But it's a lot easier to do a muscle up if you do it in a short period of time.
Yeah, and I think that relates to the way sort of if you have a look at the human structure, the way it's built for that dynamic sort of power. You can translate dynamic power quite quickly without a big muscular load, which takes a lot of energy to have a lot of muscle. I always have this classic example. I remember heading off to do selection, getting on the plane. I got on the plane, only a small guy and I sat between these two blokes, and they're about 6 foot tall, about just as wide with these massive shoulders. These were big boys, and they could carry a load, and they were just punching it out at the start of the selection course. About halfway through, we stopped eating. They just faded away. They could not maintain it because that muscular size takes up too much energy to maintain. So all about what we talk about here is finding this generalised balance in the middle, not going to extremes of being overly huge, overly big, overly skinny and fast, but finding that interim in between that makes you functional for everyday life.
So the next one we've got here, endurance, muscular endurance and cardiovascular endurance.
Two quite different things, really. I mean, I know they come under the same banner of endurance, but cardiovascular endurance is like you being able to run or swim or be able to do something consistently over a long period of time. Muscular endurance involves a big part of strength and power and just being able to repetitively do that. And they're quite different types of fitness, I feel. But they do end up under that endurance banner.
Yeah, one of these I feel that I'm pretty good at, and the other one is probably my weakest.
Which one?
I think muscular endurance I'm okay at, like the ability to put a pack on my back and walk for 15, 20 Ks. Obviously, with my knees nowadays, that's
a different story.
It's a different story, but the muscular side of it, I can take that kind of punishment. Or push-ups is probably another example of this. People often think that push-ups is a strength-based activity. I would actually say it's more of a muscular endurance activity that you're doing a repeated effort over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not really a strength-based activity at all. And having that cardiovascular endurance, being able to hike and run and swim for a long period of time is super important. Because if you don't have these backing up your strength and your power and your speed, yes, you might have a short burst, but it won't last that long. And there's a lot of functional, like just to get through the day, you need some sort of cardiovascular endurance to keep going. You can take this to extremes like, do you have to run all day and be on your feet all day? Or do you just have to keep a low, moderate level of cardiovascular endurance to keep going? And as I said, it's important as you're getting older to make sure that you take care of your joints through these. These are probably the two areas I think we suffer the most on joint pain and people get the most amount of damage is this muscular and cardiovascular endurance. And it's got to be applied really carefully.
Yeah, then the thing that follows on from that, logically in my mind, is flexibility. Kind of talking to that. So the ability to, or flexibility, really, another way to put this is stability within joint stability. So flexibility, I guess, is just the stretching of muscles or, making sure that you've got that range of motion, whereas being able to do it with a stable platform, so having the strength element into it as well, stability is probably more important from the longevity side.
Absolutely,
of things.
yeah. And when you do testing on human physiologies and how well people age and things like that, that's what they're always looking at, is this stability. And that's the ability to starve off a lot of these injuries by having enough strength but enough flexibility around your joints so they don't put extra pressure on your joints, because that's where there'll always be a point that'll give, there'll always be a weak point, and you've got to try and support that as much as you can throughout your training. I think flexibility is an important component. A lot of us pay it off. We, early on, especially when we're young, we find flexibility is like, yeah, I can touch my toes. That's fine. That's all I need to do. It's later on, though, it does tie circular back to your speed and your power again, is being reasonably flexible. I mean, it's not just injury prevention, but if you think about, if you want to move, if you want to throw a punch, if you want to throw a kick, if you want to move quickly, you need to have a reasonable amount of flexibility. You need not for your own muscles to be opposing each other when you move, because that stiffness will, again, create tiredness, will reduce your capability if you don't have a reasonable amount of flexibility.
All right, so switching it up now, thinking maybe a little bit of a hot take here, and this is certainly something that is in constant flux within my head, where I'm always changing the goal, I guess, but it's within certain parameters. It doesn't go too wildly up and down. The requirements of a functional human being. So things you should be able to do as a human being. What do you reckon?
So I think for the start, you've got to be able to get up off the ground. Get up off the ground without your hands. That ties the components of sort of flexibility and stretching there. I think you've got to be able to run. Humans are built to run. Yeah, you might have some sore joints, but you've got to find a way for you to be able to run. And that's got to be at least, say, 1.5 kilometres or about anywhere up to sort of 3 kilometres. You need to be able to run at a reasonable pace. I think you've got to have a component of strength. So we talked about push-ups, but I think the usable strength is be able to pick something up. So we talked about like the deadlift, or to carry something like a farmer's carry for a given length of space and time. Put some heavy weights in both hands and go for a walk and carry things around. And to be able to climb. This is where I think strength, overhead strength, is important. Being able to pull yourself up. And climbing, we attribute climbing a lot to upper body strength, but you have a look at the technique. When you get into the technique of climbing, it should be more legs movement, more leg strength than upper body strength. Yes, you need a lot of good grip strength, but a lot of climbing should come from your legs, or you just tire out too quickly. Your legs have a lot of natural built endurance into them, just the way they function. They just work a lot longer than your upper body ever will. And then I mean, as long as you can climb, you can run, you can swim, you can move a little bit of weight, I think that's sort of the basis of what you probably need as a human to function.
I'd agree with that. The getting up and down off the ground thing is something that I usually teach people. Like, I'm teaching people of varying physical capabilities at the moment. Some of them I think are probably, dare I say the word subhuman, from a physical standpoint. Not at their prime, not optimal. I'll put it that way. And you know, I talk about getting up and down off the ground, how important that is. Practicing getting up and down off the ground, and it's something that's very simple and very hard at the same time. Being that you can just get up and down off the ground, and it seems like, well, why would I bother doing that? It's such a simple task. But you know, you can make it much more complex. You can say, all right, I'm going to get up and down off the ground 10 different ways. So this way I'm going to use both hands. This way I'm going to use only one leg. This way I'm going to only use one hand. This way I'm going to use no hands. This way I'm going to roll over my shoulder. This way I'm going to flick up. You know, and you just practice that. It takes 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and I can guarantee you'll be pretty stuffed. Getting up and down off the ground is something that I think as Australians in the Western world, in the developed world, we do very little.
Not anywhere near enough of it. I mean, sitting in chairs at right angles all the time, and that's about as far as you're going to get your butt to the ground for a lot of people these days. And it comes at a cost. When we look at people, like, if you start to develop those movement patterns of not being able to get up and down, it inbuilts you. And if you look 10, 20 years down the track, the amount of injuries that happen from people that fall over, injure their hips and other things, you just don't get up again afterwards. There's a lot of studies that show that, especially talking about elderly here, if they fall over and do a hip, they're more likely to die within the next 12 months, you think, from a hip fracture. However, being able to increase their ability to get up and off the ground and keep that consistent throughout life increases their longevity.
Yeah, there was a particular study that I saw where they had a qualitative test of getting up and down off the ground that they scored out of 5. And they found that people that got a 3 or more, so better, at getting up and down off the ground, which essentially meant you don't require help and you don't take a long time and have to grab onto a table or a chair or something like that, that you've got up to 10 years extra life. They looked at it as a longevity study, so they followed these people and found that, yeah, on average, people who had or scored worse, a 1 or a 2, and 3 was a bit questionable, they had around 10 years less to live. So this isn't like survival in the wilderness or survival in a war zone or survival in a disaster zone. This is everyday average life.
Yeah, this is sort of the baseline. And I actually want to get into that because with talking about now as getting off the ground as being, all right, this is the minimum for baseline. But you can actually take this to quite advanced levels where it will improve your survivability in a war zone, in a fight, in context, in the most extreme places of you being able to get up and down off the ground as quick as you can. In the military, we used to call this fire and moving, getting up and off the ground. Being able to be flexible enough to do that vastly increase your survivability.
So just quickly whipping through those physical training areas, I'll give you a couple of my thoughts on different things. And I'm not going to give any specific scores or tests or things. I'll just give some rough outlines. So when it comes to agility, I think the ability to catch and throw, and that, especially with throw, I think that's probably more of a qualitative test. Are you coordinated with your throw? Do you have the right sort of biomechanics when you're actually throwing? Speed, reaction speed, and sprint speed. I think sprint speed's actually something that you can test. Can you do multiple sprints? And I would say I would define multiple as 5, 6, up to 10 sprints over I'm actually not too high on this. I'd say probably about 20 meters. I would probably do further than that personally, but as a baseline, I think 5 20-meter sprints in an okay time. I'm not giving times. Power, your ability to jump, so what your jump height is, your ability to dyno or muscle up. Now that one is a real tricky one. I understand that people are like, look at muscle ups as this holy grail, but it is just something that I think is just not practiced a lot. It's not trained for a lot. So I think it is doable, and should be doable as well. Strength, I think climbing, your ability to climb, so going to a climbing gym, things like that, but do that sort of stuff. And then lifts, like you were talking, Olympic lifts are a pretty good way to test strength, I think, at least.
Yeah.
Endurance, so your ability to carry, like you were saying, farmers carry, they're one of my favorites. Love farmers carry. I reckon it is actually one of the, if not the most functional fitness that you can regularly train in the gym atmosphere. I think farmers carries are awesome. Then cardiovascular fitness, I think things like your ability to maintain yourself in a fight type, like boxing type situation, or BJJ or whatever it is that you do. Hiking, running, swimming. Me personally, I love rowing because Viking. So those are basic, and then flexibility. You can test stretching and things like that. So in a nutshell, I think that's kind of what I'm looking at. And if I had to boil it down to a couple of things, I would look at someone's ability to pick up two heavy things and walk with it over a distance of, I would say, probably 50 meters.
Yep.
Maybe further, but that sort of distance, that would be a big one that I would look at. I would look at someone's sprint ability. I would look at someone's 2K time or 1K time, and I'd probably be encouraging it to go to 5K, as in a run.
Yeah.
That would put, like, as a start. That's where I'd probably go for.
So yeah, like you've got to just start with some sort of baseline goals. Figure out where you sit on the ladder with those baseline goals, and then work on them from there. And find out your deficits, what you're good at and what you're not good at, and know it. Knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at makes a huge difference. Knowing that you can get up and run, or actually, no, I can't run 100 meters in under 20 seconds. So I'm going to have to move off to the side or hide or do something else. But knowing your capabilities is really important, and that's why you've got to test yourself. In all of these areas, I think you've at least got to test yourself and then find what you want to work at and improve it.
Yeah. I just heard the dog barking in the background there, and I thought,
yeah,
with the right motivation, i.e. that Belgian Malinois chasing you, I reckon your sprint speed would
vastly improve. Or it'd come to a dead stop.
Or it would, totally. All right. So let's have a chat about some sort of training tips. What sort of things can we do? What are baseline sort of stuff that we're looking at, and how to train for consistency?
Sure. So I think with this, when I think about it, and look, it's very much in vogue these days, is cycling your training a lot. So have a bit of a plan. So you need a baseline to start with. Figure out what your baseline is in those particular areas. Make a plan to cycle through them so you're not just working one particular area all the time, because that's going to create an imbalance, and that's asking for an injury. And consistency. So making sure that you build up on all of these areas slowly over time. Testing frequently to see where you're going.
What I've done in the past is I've actually taken a lot of these areas that I just talked on, so agility, speed, power, strength, endurance, flexibility, and I've kind of done some tests within that space, and then given it a score out of 10, and then plotted that on a little diagram. So it's very easy then to see, okay, my power is 7 or 8 out of 10. My speed, 8 out of 10. My strength, that's only 6 out of 10. My endurance, that's only 5 out of 10. Right, now I know where I need to focus and what I need to do.
And I think if you have like specific goals of timings and weights and that, and if you work towards those goals, it helps a lot to know, to be able to measure yourself. So within that scale of 1 to 10, figure out what 5 means actually to you, and how you're going to work towards improving on it. And it doesn't hurt to have a bit of a focus. If you've got a run or a particular climb or something that you want to do over the next few months and working particularly on that goal, just don't neglect the other areas whilst you're heading towards it.
Yeah, and like if you're interested in this sort of stuff, drop us a line, contact us. I can, we can make training plans for people. But if you just want to start having some sort of aim mark, military training benchmarks. Not the basic army fitness test. That is rubbish. That is utter rubbish. What they expect kids to do to get into the military today, kids, adults, but they're young.
Technically,
what they expect them to do in the military, I look at that, it's just laughable to me, just absolutely laughable. If you look at or think about what we used to do, at least for the special forces testing, and there are differences in what you and I used to do, SAS and commandos, but there are some standardized sort of tests that we would look at and try and do, which were, I think, they're pretty good benchmarks. And if you have a look at them and you go, oh, I'm below that, that's a good goal to go for.
Yeah. And look, I think whatever you do, make it a little bit fun. Enjoy what you're doing. That will keep your consistency, keep you going long after any of these goals come about. I mean, look, hunting the goals might be fun. That might be what you really need to do. But you need to find a way to make your training enjoyable, because that way you will consistently do it. The key to all of this is consistency, not breaking yourself and being able to get up and do it every day, regardless of what else is going on in your life, and finding a way to do that.
Yeah. Murph, it's not fun.
Yeah, well...
For those who don't know, off the top of my head, it's a 1 mile run, which is 1.6 Ks in people who speak an actual logical system. Then what do we look? Was it 100?
I think 100 pull-ups.
100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats.
Yeah. Yep.
Then another mile run, and in body armor.
Yes. Which is, how heavy is the body armor? About 5 kilos, 7 kilos?
I don't know if they've got a standard for it. 7.5 is the smaller set that I've got, and then I've got some thick cast iron ones that cripple me if I wear it. To make it fun though, what I've actually started doing, because I'm basing a lot of my training off Viking fighting styles, so I'm going to adapt my body armor to chainmail.
Yeah.
And go for runs in chainmail from now on.
Jingle down the street.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it's all about, though. Like I swing heavy things around and hold stuff in front of me like it's a shield, and do rows.
Nice.
Just lots of rowing.
Very nice. But yeah, you got to find your theme, your thing, and make your training fun. Add to it, change it around. Be flexible with your training, but just get out there and train.
Yeah, I think consistency is much more important. Consistency of training, not necessarily consistency of doing the same thing, like having that rigid plan. And I say this to people too who ask me about what martial arts they should practice. What's the best martial arts? What should I practice? I go, anything that you like, that you're going to keep going back to, is a good place to start. Yes, there are definitely martial arts that I have an opinion on that are better than others. There are some that I think aren't worth being called a martial art. There are some that are only good for certain specific areas, and some that are only really good at kind of maybe balancing your mental state, if nothing else. But it doesn't matter. If you consistently do it, that's good. That's more important than going and finding the one ultimate martial art. Because if you hate it and it sucks, or the trainer is a total dick, you're not going to go do it again.
And I think it's the same with training too. Like, find a gym that you can train in, or don't train a gym. Just find an area that you can do it. But finding a way for you to consistently get up and be enthused about your training is the way to do it. Yeah,
I'm the kind of person, introverted, don't like being around a lot of people all the time. So my gym is my garage, and I've spent a bit of time building out and fitting out that with all sorts of goodies and fun toys and torture machines. And I like working out by myself. I don't mind doing it with other people every now and then, but I'm not the kind of person who thrives in that kind of atmosphere. Not the kind of person who loves competing against other people either, whereas other people do. And I noticed that when I used to work in the gym, so there's a huge slab of human beings in our society that just literally will not work out unless there's other people there or unless there's someone telling them what to do. Which is fine. That's why we have gyms and things like that. But it's good to know what it is that you do. If I had to do that, if that was the only training I had, I would get very frustrated. In fact, I did. When I was in the military, I was like, oh, fuck, training again. Oh, God, I hate this. But now I get to train by myself, and it's quite wonderful. I get to sit around for as long as I want and rest in between sets. No one says shit.
Don't have to talk to anyone and tell them what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yep. I can just put my weird folk power rock on, or 80s ballads, and just do my own thing in the gym for however long.
Cool.
Right. Anything else that you want to tell people? Send them with a giveaway?
Look, no. I think we've talked enough about different types of training there that you can do. It's not about finding any particular thing, but just finding what you want to do and just making sure that you get out on a regular basis and train about it. And we can talk about specifics for the rest of the day, but I think just overall, finding something you enjoy doing, just make sure that you are doing something.
Yeah, I think my takeaway or what I would like people to take away from this is when it comes to training, and this goes with anything in life, find those things that you are not good at and work them a little. And that this is kind of a personal reminder to me as well, because I like to be comfortable and I like to find my comfort zone and stick within it. And I'm good at this exercise. For example, if there is any sort of question about what I'm going to work out, it's going to be chest. It's going to be chest day. You know what I mean? I'm going to do some bench press type activity. I'm going to do some push-ups. I'm going to do some arms, some overhead sort of pressing stuff.
Some beach muscles.
Yeah, totally. If I'm feeling uninspired, if I'm sitting there going, oh, fuck, it's legs day, or fuck, I've got to do all my knee reconstructive type torture exercises, and then I get in there, I'm like, I'll just start off with, just doing some dumbbell presses. We'll see where it goes from there. That's fine. But left to their own devices, I think I'd only do them. So I do need every now and then that reminder, like, hey, what are you not good at? Right, your running needs improvement right now. Get out. Do the 5 clicker. Hey, your knees are falling apart. Right. Do the Nordic curls. Do the tib raises. All that kind of stuff that sometimes I sit there and go, oh man, this sucks. But find those points where you need to improve and work it.
Cool.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right, well, that's it for today's episode. So thank you very much for listening in, as always. As I said, if you need to get in contact with us, please feel free to do so. You can get a hold of us on TBG, the Brothers Gaden, TBG podcast at proton.me. One day I'll make some social media channels and stuff for us, but that day is not today.
Cool.
So yeah. Until next time, brother, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll catch you then.
See you on the flip side.